Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to get a timer here. Excellent. Hello, it's a great pleasure to be here. Hi, I'm Tom. I'm a philosopher, I'm a writer, I'm a technologist. What holds all this together is that I've been spending the last 15 odd years thinking about what it means to use technology well. I design courses and write books around critical thinking. I have an AI kind of startup research project teaching those skills. I work with a lot of different people around what AI and technology can and should mean in terms of unlocking human potential. So I'm going to take you on a whistle-stop tour of a few key ideas in terms of the themes of this day, and then I'm going to hang around and listen and talk about ethics and lovely things like that. So I just want to start off with the basics, what generative AI is, and then, as you can see, go on a little journey through what it means to keep people meaningfully in the loop, what it means for assessment, and then a recipe for success, which I would modestly suggest is applicable across a lot of different industries. But first of all, what is generative AI? And I think it's important to emphasize that AI itself, 70 years old this year as a term, happy birthday AI. It's a very big and a very old field. And for a very long time, people have been wanting to try and use computers to analyze data and information in intelligent ways. But in the last few years, a subset of machine and deep learning called generative AI has flipped everything around. And it's done this really by being a magical box that you can talk to. It allows us to interact in natural language with the world of information and data. And we call it generative AI because in response, it can generate original, creative, fluent outputs rather than set, rote analysis. There are many different flavors of generative AI, but I want you to focus on that word generative. What we get to do as a species is have a conversation with knowledge, is have a conversation with data. And we can ask machines to generate startlingly intelligent, coherent analyses and outputs in response. And put simply, this has rather changed the way that we think about computing and information in profound ways. And I think anyone who tells you they know what's coming next is lying. It disrupts. I'm just back from California. There's lots of very confident people there, but they all disagree with each other. What we do know is that we can say to a computer, generate me a realistic image, and 3 seconds later we get one. Or we can have a realistic image of something that isn't real. We can, suddenly we've mainstreamed cute image generation. But beyond this, we can also, in a few seconds, I've done this with Claude, but you can do it elsewhere, generate interactive models. We can knock up something that allows us to learn and play and code and design almost instantly. And we're only about 3 years into this. So how should we think about this? Well, what I like to try and do is come up with useful analogies. And one analogy for me is digital photography. And the reason I use this analogy is that, as you may remember, in the olden days, when I was young, photography relied upon film and development and weird old things like that. And that meant that you didn't have that many photos to play with. And then suddenly, we entered into an age of suffusion, when anyone could take as many photos as they liked with their phones. And suffusion changed everything. With AI, we suddenly have an incredible suffusion of something that used to be limited. Intelligent decision-making, intelligent original analysis. I am, among other things, a writer. I make a living by producing grammatical words. And that's suddenly looking a bit shaky as a unique selling point. Much to my alarm and despair, but we've got to face reality. Suddenly, we have a suffusion of things that used to be scarce. Images, insights. But what suffusion does, it doesn't get rid of the need for human intervention and skill. It pushes it back a level. Suddenly, we're moving back towards the meta level. We've decreased the value of being able to string together words or take a photo or come up with a PowerPoint slide or a convincing superficial analysis. That we've increased the premium on the strategic thinking behind it, the curation, the contextualization. What does this mean? Why should you care? We've put a huge premium on purpose, on trust, on interrogation, on these second order, these higher order skills. So one way of thinking about Gen AI is it's like everybody in the world who can use a computer, including everybody who's studying, has an infinite and tireless army of brilliant but slightly flaky assistants. They'll do anything, they'll do it fast, it's amazing. But you've got to tell them what to do, and sometimes they'll go off on one. And this brings me to the idea of keeping humans in the loop. And in particular, I want to push this idea. It's not just about keeping humans in the loop. It's about saying, well, where? In what loop? How? Where, how, and why do we wish to automate, and when don't we wish to do so? And this is a key question that I think isn't going away. It's nice to say keep humans in the loop, but if your loop produces enormous amounts of content, and the place the human is at the end saying, I like that one, but not that one. I like that one, but not one. That's pretty. That's a rubbish loop. It's a very dangerous loop. You don't just want humans picking things off the menu designed by AI. You want humans designing the menu. You want humans in the loop at the start, in the middle, at the end, taking advantage of the astonishing power of these systems, but not being de-skilled and marginalized by them. So just a few examples that I hope put a bit of flesh on this. You may have seen in the headlines recently some reporting by the BBC and others about Apple Intelligence. I love this particular slide here. This is an update that someone got. This is a real screen grab from Apple Intelligence from their mother. Attempted suicide but recovered and hiked in Redlands and Palm Springs. This is what Apple Intelligence did when someone's mother sent them a message saying, that hike almost killed me. This was its convenient summary. This is worth noting because you may have heard of this company, Apple. They're not a small company. They've got a bit of money. They've spent a lot of resource on AI. And yet they released a feature to millions upon millions of iPhones that manifestly was not ready for market in crucial ways because it was very smart, but it lacked contextual knowledge. Someone got a few deliveries during a day and received something on their iPhone which made it sound like their house was being invaded by armed forces because it aggregated all of the messages. Or if anyone is wondering what an Apple Intelligence summary of a breakup text looks like, it says, no longer in a relationship, once belonging to an apartment. Thank you very much, Apple. The point is that this very smart system is also very dumb. It's both at the same time. It's incredibly powerful, but it doesn't understand context. It doesn't understand social norms. It doesn't know where and how these technologies should belong in someone's life. And in fact, Apple had to U-turn on this multi-billion-dollar investment. They generally don't, but they had to put their hands up and say, look, this is not working. And so it's incredibly important, I think, to understand how when we prompt an AI, we're not getting reality, we're getting insights into the world of data. A few last examples. I spent a long time trying to get AI to draw me an image of a water glass that was full to the brim. Here it is, it says. Now, can anyone spot whether this is full to the brim or not? It's not. The reason is that stock images of glasses of water are always 2/3 full because that looks cool. But AI doesn't know anything about water. It only knows about stock images of water. It thinks this is full because it doesn't actually know what water or glasses are. It only knows the data. Fortunately, I do know about water. I do know about glasses of water, but I don't know about other stuff. Here's a clock. Okay, please show at 3:30. Okay, here you are. All the clocks in stock images show this time, so that's what AI does. Beer, interestingly, beer is always full in stock images. So Therefore, all the beer in AI world is full. Now, I use these examples because we know about beer and glasses of water and clocks, but there's millions of things we don't know about. And unless we're very careful, the wonderful power of AI may lead us to confuse a pattern in data for reality. In a strange way, the job of humans has become being in the real world of logic and facts and investigation. It is our job to anchor the power of these systems to reality, to real people, real lives, real relationships. And here again, this is generated for me. This is a business plan that I got AI to generate for me in California. It's called Moonrise Ladders Incorporated. And this is the start of a 5,000-word business plan to take people to the moon using ladders. To reach the moon via an innovative modular system of ultra-sturdy ladders. I asked AI to generate me a referenced, footnoted, convincing business plan for ladder-based space exploration that I could shop around Silicon Valley, and it did it with beautiful confidence. If you ask an AI to do something stupid, it will give you beautiful stupid. And this is very dangerous. It has never been easier to make a bad or a wrong or a stupid or a dangerous idea look perfect. And that means it's never been more important to actually know what you're talking about. So when it comes to assessment, we have wonderful opportunities, and you'll hear a lot more about these today. We can personalize, which is incredible. We can gain in efficiency. We have this infinite data engine at our fingertips. We can play with new formats. We can play with access, which is particularly exciting, because AI can translate, it can speak, it can simplify, it can summarize. The opportunities here are incredibly exciting. And of course, we can gain amazing insights. But there's a mirror-imaged opportunity which always needs to be borne in mind. The data is often biased. Of course it is, because the data is not a perfect image of the world, and the world is not perfect. Again and again, we see these incredibly powerful tools, if used uncritically, embedding social biases. You ask them to do employment analysis for you, and they turn into white, middle-aged men generating machines, because that's, in some areas, what the historical data looks like. In terms of security and cheating, again, if used unwisely, they can be tools that stop people from actually doing any learning. People can become over-reliant on them. They can be opaque. And of course, there can be a lack of capacity that leads people to panic and not understand. They can be plausible but wrong. So the point is not that one shouldn't use AI. The point is that it's not magical, and it's not a solution in a box. It's something much more interesting than that. It's a novel statistical engine that can amplify and accelerate the work of humans, that if you have good data and good understanding, can let you do remarkable things, but that needs to be deployed not only with caution, but with appropriate expertise. Amongst learners and instructors, we have this deep tension between augmentation and cognitive offloading, between allowing something else to think for me, which is basically the single worst thing I can do in a world of AI. The worst thing any organization can do is de-skill itself. And I see this when I consult and work. People who are very happy that they seem to have reduced the work they do to the level where it can be done for free by a machine. Not a great recipe. But there's opportunity here for augmentation. And partly there's opportunity here for discovering what that means together. So when I talk about a recipe for success, it's actually quite simple. It's about acknowledging human domain expertise, the knowledge of context, relationships, the knowledge of reality, of the real world, of subtext. Think back to those Apple images. Those are examples that I find entertaining of something very, very important, that what the machine knows is the data set, not the world behind that data set. Human domain expertise is absolutely vital, because otherwise, how can you tell the difference between a silly question and an important question, between a key issue and between a machine-generated distraction? High-quality data that you understand. And I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about that today. But this is the absolute gold dust. Not just high quality data that you understand well enough to interrogate, to work with, to turn into augmentation. And of course, oh, my clicker's given up on me. Come on, yes. And of course, the process that makes this meaningful, which is about testing and validating and learning. It sounds a bit like assessment, doesn't it? See what I did there? Seamless. You wouldn't get that from ChatGPT. But the point is, someone who says, I've got the answer, I've got the solution, do this, they're lying. They may not know that they're lying, but ultimately, the systems we're using are changing about every week behind the scenes. And so, when you have this army of interns, this power, you need to test, you need to validate, you need to learn. You need to treat it like a science experiment. Because the prize of working with AI is not just creating a great tool, although of course it is that. It's also creating an individual and institutional understanding about where this tool brings value, about where and how this tool can be used safely and ethically, about how to explain this tool to your stakeholders, about how to have great ongoing conversations around its ethics, its impacts. Insight, data, iteration. That's my little formula. It's not about being the first mover. This feels very important to me. One of the reasons that Apple Intelligence was so embarrassing is that that organization has been magnificent at arriving second or third to the party. They didn't make the first tablet. They didn't make the first graphical user interface. They didn't make the first smartphone. They did it better. They thought about it more carefully. And in particular with AI, precisely because these tools are so powerful, you need to be able to trust not just the magical tool, but the process and the people, because you are in a relationship where you are experimenting together, learning together how to use, how to think about these tools, how to deploy them ethically, how to communicate what you are doing to your stakeholders. And so I want to have about 5 minutes for Q&A at the end, but I just want to sum up briefly, and I'm staying around for the day, so please feel free to tell me while I'm wrong later. 5 key points for me. Keep humans meaningfully in the loop. Not just in the loop, meaningfully in the loop, so that they can select options, intervene, validate data, use their expertise, build on expertise, look to enhance and support human judgment, not to lock people out. And speed and scale are wonderful, but use them to elevate quality and relevance. Understand the risks associated with bias, opacity, and hallucination, the sort of unholy trinity of AI risks, the idea that the data set will differ from the world in important ways that you need to understand, that it will be unclear why certain outputs are arrived at, so you need to work to explain them and to mitigate against those places where the AI generates plausible but non-reality-based outputs. The water glass that's 2/3 full, the message that tells me my mother has committed suicide on a hike but is now better. And finally, think like a scientist. With this power at your fingertips, it's like everyone has a research lab. But when you've got that, it's incredibly important that you're testing, that you're improving, that you're learning, that you're not just accidentally de-skilling yourself by treating it like a magical answers box, and perhaps accidentally going out to the world with a plan to build ladders to the moon. That's me done. 5 minutes for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was really good, Tom. Thank you. Very thought-provoking. Any questions, whether they're online or in the room? Go for it, Sarah.
Thank you for that. That was brilliant. RM works with all learners at all ages.
Yep.
Based on your research, what would you say are the core skills that we would encourage our children to learn as early as they might?
So I would love to pick up on, I think what Matthew was saying at the start, which was the importance of critically engaged, thoughtful, reflective learners. So I've written books and done work with primary school all the way up. And I think it's incredibly important that kids, that learners and studiers need to acquire the habit of questioning. Even at a young age, not just what do we know, but how do we know it? And I think in general, there are what you might call enabling skills, critical thinking, creative thinking, communicative skills, interpersonal skills, which are the foundations for using technology well. Because ultimately, we're going to need people who can make good use of very powerful systems and who can reflect. One thing I'd add as well, which is an area of personal interest to me, is that these soft skills, I think, are not just to do with intellect. They're also to do with emotion. They're also to do with self-knowledge, self-awareness, empathy, self-mastery. With social media, with technology, many of the problems we see are that people use them in haste and in anger, should we say. That people's decision-making, people's teamwork, people's communication is damaged by using tools kind of fast and angry. And actually, with the rising importance of things like oracy, listening, communication, I think there's a great opportunity for us to build an emphasis on the stuff that allows people to pause, to reflect, to collaborate, and finding ways to build that into assessment. And actually, I was having a brief chat just before this about some of the ways that AI tools in universities can help people reflect upon their work, about the fact that they're great prompts for reflection. And this is an exciting area, I think, for assessment, for learning. So that's a long answer, but that's partly where I'm coming from.
Any other questions? Don't be shy.
So I guess the two things I'd say are systems continue to get better, especially from China, things like Kling and so on, some of the latest models from Gemini, they're getting better and better at doing this. But what they generate, at least the way that current, we call them diffusion models, work, will always be heavily influenced by what's in the data set. And two things we see there are that certainly historically there's been a lot of stereotyping. So this has partly been addressed by some systems, but you get stereotypes of jobs. Professors look old and white. People, yes, reflecting the real world in ways that we might not want to, because we might want to try and reflect an image that reflects an aspiration rather than a kind of historical aberration. And the fact that you have an imperfect control over AI-generated video. You're often kind of giving it hints rather than controlling it exactly. So really the key point for me is that you have to keep testing and exploring in order to understand and work with these limitations. You have to be iterative, you have to mitigate, and you have to be inventive. So for example, it may well be the case that photorealistic imagery is deceptive because people don't know whether it's AI generated or not. But cartoons, illustrations, diagrams, things like that could be more interesting. And I would be quite cautious about the use of AI-generated humans in general, because I think in terms of trust and transparency, that can be quite an unhelpfully grey area. And it may well be that one can communicate a message better by using a real human being who is actually there, or by doing something with AI that's more inventive. What I think you should always do, ethically speaking, is ensure that your audience knows what you are doing and what they're dealing with. So people should know whether they're dealing with an AI, with a human, with a hybrid, with an AI-created product, and so on. But ultimately, yeah, keep playing, keep experimenting, and be cognizant of the limits. Be cognizant of where the current limits are, and then be inventive about working within them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've run the red clock.
We've run the red clock. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. That was really good.